Hello and welcome back to the Frogs of War podcast. I'm Anthony North, that's Russ Hodges, and we're here to talk all things TCU athletics. And tonight we're coming off, TCU has completed a 12-0 regular season, undefeated regular season for the TCU Horned Frog football team. We're going to talk all things that big time win over Iowa State, looking ahead to the Big 12 championship against Kansas State and all the basketball and volleyball that's taken place in the last week as well. Sorry we're getting this to you maybe a day late. You might be hearing this Friday morning, headed into uh, the game Saturday. So sorry, I'm off on business travel. I'm not at home. If you're seeing on YouTube, I've got some hotel decor here behind me. But thanks for sticking with us. And I guess Russ, how are you doing tonight?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, I appreciate everybody's patience while we get this cooked up tonight. Dealing with a little bit of a sinus cold still. Came down with this past weekend. My allergies are kind of kicking my ass right now a little bit, but looking forward to this weekend. It's going to be a really big game, and excited to break this all down for you guys and ready to get right into it. So.
Yeah, I guess just thinking about coming into the season, is this even possible? Was there anywhere on your thoughts, even in the most optimistic worldview as a Horned Frog fan, that TCU would complete the regular season, even even in the Big 12 championship? To be honest, I mean, 12-0, it's kind of unfathomable. It's amazing to think about where this team has come from this point last year to where we sit today.
Yeah, no question. I did not envision this at all, and I don't think many people did. And Sonny Dykes making history as the first year head coach at TCU and first year head coach in the Big 12 to go 12-0, just speaks to how historic this season has been. And given how everything unfolded last year and all the turnover, all the roster turnover, a lot of new assistant coaches, I was hoping to see TCU just get to a bowl game. If that meant going 6-6 or 7-5, then so be it. Just try and generate some kind of positive momentum to really start getting this thing rolling. And it's just been unbelievable. I mean, we've talked about it on a week in and week out basis, how this team has found ways to win, and you're already starting to see some of those uh, fruits being harvested, I guess, with all the recruiting news, some big time recruits that are making their pledges to the program, and we just learned today there's going to be a significant financial investment into the strength and conditioning facilities and some new football facilities coming to campus. So it's been just amazing to watch everything unfold this year, and to just to watch the Iowa State game after so many weeks of close games and watching the Frogs find ways to grind it out. It was really exciting to see TCU finally get that statement win. I know Iowa State's 4-8, and it might not be saying much looking at the team at face value, but uh, facing the number one defense in the Big 12 and scoring 62 points. I know two of those touchdowns were on pick sixes, but the Frogs completely dominated this game on both sides of the ball in all three phases. And what a timely win it is, too, when all of the national headlines and all the national media attention is beginning to ramp up about the college football playoff, conference championship games coming up, teams jockeying for position in the top four, uh, big blue blood programs that are lurking on the outside in Ohio State and Alabama. So every style point, unfortunately, really matters at this phase of the season. And I hate to talk about style points, but it's a nature of the business, as they say. But yeah, just getting back to your original question about this season, no chance in hell. I mean, like I said, get to if we would have gotten to the Cheez-It Bowl again, I would have been happy with that. Just get something positive going.
Yeah, no doubt. And this Iowa State game was the most dominant game TCU has played this season, certainly at least since the Oklahoma game. And on a weekend that saw LSU fall, Ohio State fall, Clemson fall, and some of those contenders who were creeping up behind the Horned Frogs took losses, and it gives a little bit of space to the Frogs, but we'll get into that as we talk later on. But I think putting on this kind of performance, I don't think any of the national media are actually poo-pooing this game. I think there's a good respect for what it was to put this kind of performance on that Iowa State team, despite their record in the win-loss column. Certainly, Iowa State with the best defense in the conference, top 10 in the country, allowing 16.5 points per game going into this contest. And yeah, I did see a lot of people like, oh no, TCU's offense didn't score 62 points. Okay, so TCU's offense scored 48 points on the number one defense that was allowing 16 and a half points per game through the season. It was a thorough, dominant performance up and down. And also coming into the game, Xavier Hutchinson, the top receiver in the conference, averaging like 10 catches a game, over 100 yards per game, is held to 2 catches for 11 yards against TCU's secondary. Just a absolute stunner of a performance there. I mean, he is a finalist for the Bolitnikoff, and he just had, I mean, his worst game of his career against TCU. Just I think TCU's defense was a little bit maligned at some points during the season, but you just kind of have to shout out. Same as Bijan Robinson is a finalist for the Doak Walker Award. That TCU defense held him to 29 yards. These are elite players on the national stage that TCU is taking to the woodshed. So it's great to see. And yeah, we can get into the events of the day against Iowa State. Quentin Johnston went out there for the opening, the the coin flip. He was captain on the field, and he was dressed fully, available to play. And it kind of seemed like maybe he just wasn't needed, so he didn't have to play. Also had no Tay Barber, so a lot of people had to step up, and certainly did in this case. That opening drive kind of set the tone, put TCU in an opportunity with a fourth down in an easy field goal range where you could put those quick points up on the board with the hero Griffin Kell coming off his big kick, and Sonny Dykes says no, we're going to go out and take this touchdown here on a fourth down there in the red zone. That completely fooled that Iowa State defense. The play action kind of pop pass to Jorquarius Spivey, wide open in the end zone. Duggan hits him just right. He gets it over that defender that's trying to recover, and things were off to the races right from the start.
Yeah, TCU came out offensively. I thought they attacked the middle of that defense really well. I love that fourth down call. I love the play action. Max fakes the handoff, tucks the ball, and Iowa State's front just collapses and allows Jaquarius Spivey to run right over the middle and score that touchdown. And we talked last week about how with the skill players banged up, there were going to be some opportunities for some complementary guys like a Spivey or Jordan Hudson or a Jared Wiley or even like a Blair Conright to step up and make some plays in this game. And I think this was Jaquarius Spivey's best game as a Horned Frog. Had 3 catches for 43 yards and made some really nice plays over the middle of the field. And then TCU's defense comes right out. Jamoy Hodge gets a sack on that first Iowa State drive to force a punt. And it was like you said, TCU was just off to the races from that point on. I mean, Kendra Miller is able to break outside for a long touchdown run. You have the Miller Bradford pick six at the end of the first quarter on the first play of that drive. It went from 10-0 to 24-0 in a matter of 2 minutes, and we weren't even out of the first quarter. And I hate to say that the game was over after the first quarter, but it really felt like it sort of was. Although I will give the Cyclones credit for going for it on fourth down, and Hunter Deckers rolls out to his left and makes a spectacular
No
throw
idea how
to
he made that play. Amazing play.
an amazing play, yeah, to Hanukkah for that touchdown. I thought he might have been out of bounds when he caught it. It was an awesome play, undoubtedly their best play of the day, but it just didn't matter. Max Duggan was uber efficient in this game, had 17 of 24 completed for 212 yards and three touchdowns. TCU played mistake-free football all the way through. Griffin Kell hits a 54-yarder. He's 2 for 2 on field goals in this game. And we talked also last week about the defense putting TCU's offense in short fields to lessen the burden of going up against that top-ranked defense. How about just scoring two touchdowns? That makes it a lot easier, doesn't it?
Yeah.
When you're able to get two pick sixes and Josh Newton, of course it's Josh Newton putting the exclamation point at the end of the game. Just the heartbeat of the team right now. If you watch the Carter Boys docuseries, you would understand that. This game could not have gone better for TCU as a program and as a fan watching the game. They were able to rest everybody that they needed to. Sonny Dykes has talked about how Quentin Johnston in practice looks fresh. Kendra Miller said he feels fresh because he didn't have to carry the rock so much in this game. So the Frogs are going to be at full strength going into the Big 12 championship game, and that's a huge plus that this team that has played, I believe, this is going to be the 11th game in 11 weeks coming up on Saturday. They're feeling pretty fresh. At least the main skill guys are on the offensive side. But defensively, I don't think you could have asked for much more in this game.
Yeah, it was really defensively also took them right to them right from the start. I mean, the sack on the first drive. So start the game, 2 drives, 2 3 and outs, 2 punts, 1 total yard for Iowa State, 1 yard. And and then the third possession for Iowa State is an interception for a touchdown. So yeah, I was trying to get like a tweet off or something in the game thread where, I was trying to give, TCU's already at 17 points in the first quarter, more than what Iowa State gives up all season. And I couldn't even type it out before Miller Bradford was walking into the end zone with the pick six to turn it to 24. Yeah. And yes, it definitely felt like that game was over at that point. Iowa State was not going to endure the level of effort that TCU was at once it was pretty clearly out of reach. Another great day for Max Duggan. The 3 touchdown passes, and he doesn't play the fourth quarter at all. It's his stats for the season, and we'll probably talk about his Heisman chances. I think TCU kind of more or less formally began the Heisman campaign for Duggan here late this week. And, it may be a little too late for Duggan and for the campaign. But in any case, he doesn't play, obviously, the first half of the Colorado game, doesn't play fourth quarters against Tarleton or Oklahoma or Iowa State, and he's still over 3,000 yards, 29 touchdowns passing. He leads the Big 12 in passing and in passing touchdowns. Just an incredible season for Max Duggan that, it's hard not to just be super proud of him and thankful that he stuck around and that he's the kind of person that he is to to continue to put in that effort and lead to this incredible season that he's giving to TCU and leading this team to this undefeated record thus far.
Yeah, TCU Football put out a really nice video on Twitter that LT had the joy of narrating, and it was really a nice listen for those who may be unfamiliar with what Max has gone throughout his career. And us TCU fans, we know what he's been through, so we understand it already. But um, I think what has kind of stood out to me, and I think it stood out in this game, his two touchdown passes to Savion Williams and Jordan Hudson in the second half were really nicely thrown balls. And I think it was the Savion Williams touchdown where Duggan makes the read, but he anticipates because there's a defender there. He's got to wait for the route to develop and for the defender to get out of the way before he throws the ball. And the timing of the play is just spot on. I mean, those are the kinds of plays that he has made this season, and it's been nice to see some of that development. When you talk about just a player as a quarterback, it's not just chucking the ball deep down the field and saying, F it, QJ's down there somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Like he's made some really nice throws over the middle and throws where only his guy can catch it. In the red zone, over the middle of the field. So it's been really nice to see that. And I definitely believe after the Baylor game that he punched his ticket to New York for the Heisman ceremony. I think, to be completely honest, depending on how things shake out this weekend, I believe I said last week my top four candidates were Blake Corum, CJ Stroud, Max Duggan, and Caleb Williams. I think Caleb Williams right now is probably the front runner for the award, but
By a lot. I think he's a clear front runner, no doubt.
yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. But I also believe that should USC lose against Utah and maybe Caleb Williams struggles and Max Duggan has a really nice performance in a Big 12 championship win against Kansas State, people might start thinking about it a little bit more. I know Caleb Williams obviously has the stats right now, but it'd be really difficult to look away from 13-0 and a conference championship as opposed to 11-2. And of course, those are hypotheticals. But regardless, all of the awards, the nominations for finalists, Walter Camp Player of the Year, Davey O'Brien Award. He won the Johnny Unitas Golden Arm Award. Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year, first team All Big 12. Everything so well deserved for Max Duggan. And I guess just one more note on the Iowa State game, at least from my standpoint, the mistakes that the Cyclones made, and we've kind of poked fun at Iowa State throughout the year when we've talked about some of the scores in the Big 12 and how there have been so many one-score losses, and they seem to invent new ways to lose football games. And you look at what happened in this game. Jace Gilbert misses 2 field goals wide left that could have potentially made a bit of a difference. The 2 interceptions that are returned for touchdowns. Keon Stewart forces a fumble, sticks his helmet right into the ball and forces a fumble. Timon Mitchell picks it up. So those are just the things that I believe on the broadcast they were talking about how Iowa State is snake bitten. Those are just bad football plays. Like you can't win games that way. That's why you're 4-8. And have there been some unfortunate moments? Absolutely. But
should they have beat Texas? Most definitely, they should have beat Texas. They had that game won. But yeah, good football teams. Those aren't the plays that you make, and that's how you win or lose a football game is kind of on those margins. And TCU more than took advantage of the margins in that one, and pretty much all around. And even when all of the starters had already left the game, and backup defense is in the game. They give up a few runs, but that offense takes the ball and drives on down the field, and it's this TCU team was not going to allow the final game of the regular season against Iowa State end with a score of 55 for TCU, like it was in 2014. After that last game, it felt like a little bit of a bad omen. There were a lot of comments on Twitter and in the game thread of just like, oh no, here we are at 55. Just like people are so nervous and scared about this playoff situation. But I think it was nice to see Chandler Morris get that drive and really make a nice throw to Jordan Hudson there for Hudson's second touchdown of the game. To see that even without Duggan on the field, without Quentin Johnston on the field, and all the starters, that even the second unit could still take it to what was the best defense in the conference.
Yeah, I think this is a perfect situation for TCU going into Big 12 championship weekend, in that your team is playing with a lot of confidence. Your team is healthy. Sonny Dykes actually talked about how a lot of the guys were sick before the Baylor game, and that was an interesting little tidbit to hear about that. He said in the press conference that 15 to 18 guys came down with some kind of an illness that week, and they kind of they rolled into Waco not really knowing what to expect in terms of their health and everything. But you have to believe that the locker room is feeling good right now. Huge game coming up, obviously, but players playing with a lot of confidence, and I think that's a really important factor as we now look ahead to the conference championship game.
All right, with that, we'll move on from the Iowa State game. We're now nearly a week removed from it, so we're already on to the conference championship week. But just to close out the final week of the regular season, again, no stakes for bowl games. So all the teams that could make bowl games already had reached their sixth win. While Iowa State and West Virginia could not. That didn't mean that they weren't playing hard, because West Virginia, third-string quarterback, comes and takes down Oklahoma State, to kind of put a final damper on that Cowboy season. Certainly, obviously, Kansas State took down Kansas to earn that final bid into the Big 12 championship with a win over Kansas. 47-27. On Black Friday, Texas took down Baylor 38-27. I think, it'll be interesting to see where Texas ends up even after this conference championship week. I think Texas will see a lot of regret in their season, maybe, to fall in the way that they did to Alabama early in the season, and to fall in such a close game at the end to TCU in the end. I think they're going to feel like going into next year, oh yeah, everything's fine. But I think it's pretty clear Bijan Robinson, that was his last game. Probably, I don't know if he's announced yet, but I can't imagine he plays in a bowl game for Texas, that he'll go on and move on to the NFL draft process. So there'll be a little bit of starting over for the Longhorns, but I think it's, no matter what, they're going to consume a lot of the oxygen of national media conversation, and Arch Manning come into town, and the quarterback competition that is sure to begin there, as Quinn Ewers kind of struggled much of this season there in Austin. And I guess Hudson Card has already announced a transfer portal.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Did I see that? So should be interesting off season as always for the Longhorns. And then the other one that is pretty fun here, Texas Tech takes down Oklahoma in overtime. Kind of a complete failure from Oklahoma to even be in this situation, but good for Texas Tech. I'm happy for them. I think it was one of those awful days for Oklahoma fans as they see Spencer Rattler thriving, they see Lincoln
Hmm.
Riley thriving, Caleb Williams thriving. Meanwhile, they're losing to Texas Tech. Just you hate to see it for the Sooners.
And Dylan Gabriel throws for 440 plus yards and 6 touchdowns in that game, and still find a way to lose on a field goal that may or may not have been good. I guess we'll never know, but yeah, a really fun last weekend in the Big 12. Texas and Baylor. Baylor actually held the lead late in that game, and Texas took every play, every piece of paper in the playbook that had a pass play on it and just threw it out. They they had 22 consecutive run plays to end the
Bijan,
game.
Roshan only. Yeah.
Yep. That shows you how much confidence they have in Quinn Ewers at the quarterback position right now. And not to dog on the kid because he's a young kid, a lot of expectations, a lot of weight on his shoulders, but unfortunately, I don't think that's really going to uh, change going into the off season, and especially with Bijan Robinson, like you said, likely playing his last game as a Longhorn. And listen, you're a running back. You got to keep those legs fresh
Hmm.
as long as you can, given how the shelf life of those players has decreased significantly once you get into the league. Um, do what's best for you, Bijan. If you need to sit out this bowl game, if it's the Alamo Bowl, I think it might be the Alamo Bowl since Texas is the third place team in the Big 12. Um, might get a good Pac-12 matchup and just enjoy it from the sidelines. Enjoy the experience. Keep those legs fresh. And the Bears hopefully will come calling for you in the third round.
Yeah, third. He's not making it to the third round. We could go ahead and say that. Um, all right. So with that college football playoff, the penultimate, the second to last college football playoff, the last one of the meaningless television made for TV shows that ESPN trots out there before Selection Sunday, this coming Sunday, had TCU at number 3 in the playoff ranking, moving up with Ohio State's nasty loss to Michigan at home. So I think whatever happened in that game, TCU was going to move ahead of that team, and
Mhm.
with all of the other things around it, it's set up nicely for a very clean top four, who are very clearly the top four teams at this point. So it's too neat for college football, and there just has to be something crazy is going to happen. And maybe it's, if you're listening to this Friday, maybe it's Friday night in Las Vegas for the Pac-12 championship with Utah and USC. Maybe something crazy happens there. Hopefully, nothing crazy happens in Arlington on Saturday. But I think it's really tough because it feels like we are in this same spot where how can TCU not be in?
Mhm.
How can you watch this entire season, see what TCU did, and leave the frogs out? Um, you know, Michigan doesn't have to play Ohio State again. USC doesn't have to play Oregon or Washington at all.
Mhm.
Um, Georgia doesn't have to play Alabama, doesn't have to play Tennessee again, and Ohio State won't be playing this weekend at all.
Mhm.
Um, I know that there's a lot of national media that is on the bandwagon of TCU should be in no matter what happens this weekend. I just don't know that Boo Corrigan and whomever else is on that committee shares such an opinion. And I know for my well being, I sure hope TCU just goes out and wins on Saturday so that we don't have to worry about it and stress
Mhm.
for Sunday on the selection show. But I guess what do you think? Do you think TCU has done enough with the body of work as it stands and what has happened elsewhere in college football that TCU should be in this top four no matter what happens on Saturday versus number 10 Kansas State?
Yeah, I think the thought that I have, and it's a thought that I've had for about a week or so now, and it's a sentiment that's reflected widely online, whether it's from college football writers, analysts, local beat reporters. The top four teams, as they stand right now, Georgia, Michigan, TCU, and USC, those teams have all but clinched college football playoff bids. That's my opinion, and I say that because we can't be talking ourselves into scenarios where we are rewarding teams like Ohio State or even Alabama that are not playing this weekend, that didn't earn the right to play for conference championships. Why are we discussing hypotheticals where we are rewarding those teams and punishing teams that earned that opportunity and are playing an extra game? Um, if you were to discuss TCU losing and being dropped out in favor of Ohio State, how can you pull out a 12-win team that's a conference finalist over an 11-win team that's an at-large that's watching at home from their couch? You can't. I don't think you can do that logically. And the committee, I think, has done a lot of dumb stuff over the years, but I think should they do something like that, whether it's to USC or to TCU, I think there would need to be a very long and serious conversation about whether or not there should even be conference championship games anymore and whether or not the committee should even exist. I'm, you know, honestly pretty calm about where the top four are and where they stand in terms of their playoff hopes. Like I said, I think they've pretty much clinched, and this weekend is going to be about jockeying for position. And when you consider that, like you mentioned, Clemson lost, LSU lost, Oregon lost, I think those were the three schools with the greatest opportunity to potentially challenge and play their way in. Like if LSU beat Texas A&M and M and then upset Georgia, they're probably in.
They would
If
have definitely been in. Yes.
Yeah, and Clemson, had they beaten South Carolina and then knocked off North Carolina to win the ACC at 12-1, there's an argument that they could be in over a two-loss USC or a one-loss TCU, although I think TCU would probably win that argument. Oregon, had they beaten Oregon State and clinched a spot in the Pac-12 title and beat USC, there would be an argument for that. But none of those things happened, and here we are now.
And
And
Ohio State didn't just lose; they got stomped on their home field and were totally outclassed by Michigan. So it's not like Ohio State just Michigan just snuck by them. They
mm,
didn't sneak by them. They blasted them.
yeah, and so I think ultimately where we stand right now is I think you have a lot of uh, folks who have taken the time and have put in the work and the effort to actually learn about college football and understand college football, for the most part, reflect or share that sentiment that these top four teams have earned their spots in the playoff. I think the folks who are pleading the cases for Ohio State or even Alabama, which is absolutely insane considering where the Crimson Tide are at number six with two losses as an at-large. The folks who are doing that are the stands on Twitter, the homers, the fanboys, and people who work in national media like Stephen A. Smith and Paul Feinbaum, who, look, God bless Stephen A. I grew up, I watched a lot of First Take. I watched a lot of Around the Horn. I watched a lot of PT. I used to love watching sports talk growing up in high school and going through college. And I think Stephen A. used to have some credibility as a sports journalist. I understand he's paid a lot of money to do what he does, and I think that's great. But to see him go on national TV and discredit TCU and discredit TCU's schedule while talking up Ohio State and Alabama, who don't have those same credentials in terms of strength of record and strength of schedule, like, stop just being a loud noise in a suit. Like, can you actually sit down and do some homework before you get on TV and spout off absolute nonsense? Because the problem is, a lot of people watch those shows and rely
And that
on
may be the only
posts.
place they hear about TCU at all.
Correct. Yeah, and with Paul Feinbaum as well. And I know Paul works for the SEC network, so you know he's going to have a little bit of a slant, but it, I would caution anybody who genuinely wants to be informed about college football and learn about college football and where these teams actually stack up against each other from an objective standpoint. Subscribe to your local papers, read up on The Athletic, follow college football writers and analysts on Twitter, and actually take the time to do your homework because it's not that difficult to be educated the right way. Um, and if we have more of that discourse, I think we won't be having to waste our time dealing with these BS hypotheticals about dropping out teams like TCU and USC for Ohio State and Alabama. Getting off on a little bit of a side rail tangent
No,
rant
I'm
here,
totally
but
with you, and I've got a couple more things on this. So I think the Alabama thing just I do not understand it. I mean, I think, well, I'll say this. I understand where a lot of that conversation comes from because the committees traditionally have shown this to be important. They've shown dollar bills and eyeballs and big stadiums and big t-shirt fan bases to be a driving factor in how they make their decisions. We know this to be the case. We knew it in 2014 and we know it today. So, I do understand where there is a cynical sector of college football fandom that I have to agree that this committee just may decide that it's whatever. We want it to be Ohio State, so it'll be Ohio State. We want it to be Alabama, so it'll be Alabama. The end. And there's nothing else you can do about it because that's who we've given the power to. And no matter how many metrics or strength of record or whatever else, they'll come up with something to throw at the wall to say it should be what they want it to be. And yes, that's cynical, but the committee has shown us nothing to the contrary. The Alabama thing, though, cracks me up because their best win is on the road at Texas on a last-second field goal against Hudson Card. TCU beat that team what should have been 2 touchdowns, but that fumble at the end from Max Duggan turns into that touchdown. But that Hudson Card offense put in work against the Alabama defense. The Quinn Ewers offense did not put in work against the TCU defense. There's no legitimate argument that Alabama has any case over TCU at 1 loss, TCU at 2 losses. No case. So get rid of them. The Ohio State thing, that's just, again, it's big stadiums, a lot of eyeballs, a lot of dollar bills. You're going to sell a lot of T-shirts. I don't know that there's much case there either, but the Alabama thing is the worst. I mean, how they're still even ahead of Tennessee, frankly, makes no sense. They got beat by Tennessee. They both have 2 losses. They both lost a not great SEC second game. I don't know.
Yeah, I like listening to some folks on Twitter as well when they talk about hypothetical matchups and how like a USC or a TCU shouldn't get in because but they would get rolled by Georgia. How do you know that?
First
You're
of all,
talking out of
yeah.
talking out of your butthole when you say stuff like that because
Well,
you're basing it off of nothing. Like if you could present some evidence that would suggest, okay, this is going to be a really difficult matchup for Team A, here's why Team B might fare better against this team. Not that it even matters at the end of the day, because the playoff is not about uh, creating matchups. It's about putting the top four teams in the country together in a 14 playoff bracket. I know the committee might
It's a
take
little bit
that a
about
little
Matt.
column
It's
A,
a
a little
little
column
bit
B,
about, yeah, it's a little
but
bit about what ESPN wants. Yes,
yeah,
yes.
but I think, look, ultimately at the end of the day, USC could lose against Utah, and I think they should still get in with two losses because they have a quality schedule. They beat Notre Dame, they beat UCLA, beat Oregon State, earned the opportunity to play for a conference championship. How could you punish a team for playing an extra game? It just would not make sense to me at all. And TCU having an even stronger case with 12 wins already and several ranked wins, you lose one game against the team that you had already beaten in the regular season. So in a way, okay, maybe you split with a top 10 team in the country.
And if it
And
had
you're
been
going to
the other
drop
way,
the frogs out because of
right?
that? No,
If it had
I
been
don't
the
think
other way
so.
around, where if TCU had lost the first game and then wins in Arlington to win the championship, well, they'd definitely be in with
Hmm.
one loss. They'd definitely be in. Well, I would like to think that they would definitely be in. Yeah, and it's a TCU and USC have advanced beyond the point that Ohio State and Alabama have,
Hmm.
right? It's, you wouldn't say so in the NCAA tournament, TCU loses to Arizona. Arizona then goes and like loses to Houston. That doesn't, we don't then get to see TCU play Houston in the Elite Eight. You didn't get to the next round. You're
Hmm.
out.
Yeah,
Um, Ohio State, you had your chance to get to the next round. You didn't. You're out. Go
yeah.
play in the Rose Bowl or the Orange Bowl or wherever you feel like. And I'm sure everyone will watch that and all your fans will buy your t-shirts and that'll be great for ESPN as well. But you missed your opportunity to get into the playoff.
Yeah, it's when you look at 12 game bodies of work, like what we're seeing this weekend. And again, it would be different if there were teams like Oregon or LSU or Clemson that legitimately had chances to play in. The way I see it right now, like this is like unlocking the bonus level in a
Yeah,
video game where you did the necessary work to beat the game. Now you get the bonus stage. Go score some extra points and see where you stack up with the rest of the players. You don't those teams that didn't unlock that bonus stage, why should you be rewarded? You know what I'm saying? Like, look, we could go on about this
yeah.
for quite a while, but I think the committee at the end of the day is going to do the right thing. It's very difficult for me to say that. I'm kind
It'll
of
be the first time.
kind of clenching my fists a little bit as I say that, but I genuinely think they will do the right thing. And I guess one little item I guess we could discuss real quick is there was some news that initially it was reported that the Rose Bowl was going to amend its contract to allow the playoff to expand earlier. It was originally reported that 2026 would be the first year we get the 12-team playoff. Now it's going to be 2024, which is it's going to come up real soon. Um, I'm curious. I know I had mentioned this when we first started this topic, but are conference championship games still going to be around when the 12-team playoff comes? And I wonder that because you're potentially, and how it's going to work for those who don't know is if you're a Power Five conference champion, you will be automatically in the playoff. There's going to be no discussion about hypotheticals or doing any of this dancing that we're doing right now. You're a conference champion from Power Five, you're automatically in. So is there really any incentive to do a conference championship game knowing that, and also knowing that, let's say you win a conference champ, you're a conference champion after 12 games and you get the number 5 seed. You're going to have to play the round of 12, the round of 8, which is the first bowl round, the round of 4, which is the second bowl round, and the national championship. That's 4 extra games. on top of what could be a 13 game regular season if you do a conference championship. That's 17 games. That's an NFL schedule for college kids. I would have a very difficult time accepting that. And maybe the players would want it, I don't know, but that's a lot of football to play.
That is a lot of football to play. What I'll say, I think, is it makes, I think it actually makes the conference championships mean more to your postseason chances, because if you play a difficult opponent and win that game, you get that bye in the first round of the 12 team playoff, right? So I think the setup is that
Interesting. Okay.
the top four conference champions get a bye and
Hmm.
don't have to play until the second round. And that's a huge incentive. That makes those games worth so much more. I mean, this week's the Georgia game versus LSU does not matter at all. But if they were playing for an opportunity to get a bye and get that week of rest and get to play, allow somebody else to beat up on their first opponent, that's a huge incentive to go out and win that game. So I think it will make more games matter. It may not make, you may lose some of those where certain games mean everything. You know, that Michigan Ohio State game meant everything to those teams' seasons. You may lose that. That's true. But and I think part of this too goes to the Big Ten in particular right now, and is continuing at least until the next year, is keeping their division structure
Hmm.
where one side of the division is good and the other is terrible. So yeah, in the Big Ten, there's no danger of playing in that 13th game, because you're playing a patsy that you're going to roll over 59-0, and it's going to be fine. But if it were like in the Big 12, where the top two teams play, or this season where in the Pac 12 where the top two teams play, that would be Michigan and Ohio State again facing off for a spot in the playoff. And maybe you get two teams in, maybe not. But, I think that going forward is going to be exciting. It's going to be fun, and it will keep more things alive for longer. It gets a sixth conference champion into the playoff every year. So,
Hmm.
somebody, Tulane or Boise State or whomever, gets that chance to really prove it on the field.
Hmm.
Which, as a TCU fan, you got to like to see folks getting the opportunity to prove it on the field.
Yeah. And more guap for everybody. Can't forget about
Oh
the
yeah,
guap.
yeah.
It,
ESPN's gonna love it. Everybody's happy.
insert the GIF of Bugs Bunny counting his cash up, because there's gonna be a lot of money made over those extra playoff games for sure.
Most definitely. All right, so we've talked a lot of hypotheticals and a lot of hand wringing about the playoff and all of that, and you know what? It may just not matter, because TCU football has a game this Saturday against Kansas State, where for an opportunity to win the Big 12 championship. TCU played in the first version of this championship, and this will be the last version in this state of the Big 12. And it's a huge opportunity for TCU, a very difficult game against a tough opponent that gave TCU fits earlier in the season. How do you see this game against? It's a top 10 matchup, college game day in town, Jerry World.
Mm.
Um, it's gonna be madness. How do you see it playing out for the Frogs?
Yeah, knowing College Game Day is going to be there gives me a little bit of a confidence boost. Just knowing historically how well the Frogs have fared
Shine that
on
spotlight
College
on
Game Day.
TCU, and we love it. Yeah,
I think it's is it 8-1, 8-1 or 9-1
yeah,
on
8 and
College
1
Game Day, 8-1. Okay, so
and 2 and
uh,
0 with that Fox kickoff. Yeah,
Yep, the Frogs know when to show up on College game day, and I think both teams, Kansas State, when you think about teams immediately off the top of your head that can score a lot of points in the Big 12 and have explosive offenses, you think about, or at least for me, I think about Texas Tech, I think about Oklahoma, TCU for a few years. Kansas State has really rolled on the offensive side over the last few games. 47 points against Kansas, 48 against Oklahoma State. I believe they had 31. It was 31-3. I believe they cruised over Baylor. I believe it was. So this team right now is really cooking on the offensive end, and it's not just Deuce Vaughn. And Deuce Vaughn has been really steady and playing at a really high level, as everybody expected this year. But Will Howard is playing unquestionably his best football of his college career when you look at his numbers over the last couple seasons compared to what he's doing now. And make no question, they tried to make mention that Adrian Martinez, he is available for this game if need be. No, this is Will Howard's game. I don't see any potential scenario other than if Will Howard were to get hurt, where Adrian Martinez would come in. He has played exceptionally well, Will Howard has, and when you look at Kansas State's receivers, it's not like Iowa State or TCU where you have that alpha dog like Quentin Johnston or Xavier Hutchinson. It's almost like 1A, 1B, and 1C between Malik Knowles, Phillip Brooks, and Cade Warner. So all three of those guys have been effective this year. They've made big plays. Will Howard has very seldomly turned the ball over. So offensively, Kansas State is a significantly improved bunch. And then on the defensive side, Anodike Uzama is going to be a factor in this game, much like Tyree Wilson was for Texas Tech. And when we talked about Kansas State during the regular season, he was one of the players that we talked about. How do you neutralize a player like him? So he's going to be a factor for sure. TCU winning the regular season matchup 38-28. I will get to our predictions a little bit later, but I think this is going to be another fast-paced, potentially high-scoring game. But the Frogs got to be ready on the defensive end because this isn't just going to be a Deuce Vaughn featured offense. This is a much more balanced offense and a much more talented offense when you look at the collection of receivers that they've assembled.
Yeah, man, Kansas State scares me. I think several weeks ago when we already knew TCU was going to be in the Big 12 championship, headed into the Texas game, I said in our group chat, I would much rather have played Texas than Kansas State or even Baylor. And just, I think the way that they play, there's never going to be any quit, and extremely well coached and superstar players on both sides of the ball. So I think it's definitely going to be a challenge. It's reflected in point spreads and national sentiment and all of that. I think there's a lot of backing for Kansas State right now, and it's well deserved. I mean, Will Howard is a Horned Frog killer. I mean, he took down TCU back in Fort Worth in 2020. He very nearly did again here in 22, coming off the bench after one possession. And, I think he's fully capable of taking advantage of whatever TCU is going to give him. And I guess one thing on the game from in October against Kansas State that I kind of have to get off my chest, because we keep hearing about how TCU won this game because Kansas State's quarterback injuries. I disagree with the premise entirely. Adrian Martinez played 3 plays. Jake Rubley played 6 plays. And the rest of the game was Will Howard doing Will Howard things, and he was great, and he went on to win a bunch of games. Will Howard is their best quarterback right now, and Will Howard played all but 9 plays of offensive snaps in that game. And yes, one of those was a terrible interception from Rubley, but I don't really know. I at the point um, where Howard came out of the game for a few plays, uh, Rubley came into the game already trailing TCU. TCU had already that 18-point comeback, all of that stuff. It was already done.
Mhm.
There was no because the quarterback got hurt, because Adrian Martinez. It was because Adrian Martinez got hurt that Kansas State even scored any points.
Mhm.
Adrian Martinez wasn't doing anything against that TCU defense. And whether he came into the game hobbled or not, Will Howard was very clearly the best quarterback for this team all season. Um, I don't know. I get upset with that because you clearly didn't watch the game and you just like listened to some narrative about TCU hurting quarterbacks. Uh, that's not the reason why TCU won that game. TCU won that game because TCU's defense gave up 0 points over the final 40 minutes of gameplay. Um, and if that's the kind of performance they put in on Saturday, they're going to come out and win again. And it's not going to be because Will Howard played or whomever's at quarterback.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I get a little. I'm not again going off on tangents. I don't want to get too much on that, but I think that's a narrative that TCU's heard to kind of downgrade their performances this season, and that's one of those cases where it's just not true.
And let's not forget, they also had a couple opportunities to kick field goals and potentially uh,
Two
cut
missed
into
field goals in that
TCU's
period.
lead a little bit. Yeah, this and it's kind of interesting thinking about that. TCU has kind of benefited from some missed field goals in some of these games. When you look at Iowa State, Jace Gilbert misses two. Baylor missed a field goal. Kansas State, a couple missed field goals. Kansas had a missed field goal. So some of that good fortune, yeah, sure. But your defense is also putting those teams in positions to have to attempt kicks from 40 yards, 43 yards, 45 yards. And you know how kickers are in college football, man. Life is like a box of chocolates because you never know what you're going to get. Unless you're a TCU fan, you know what you're going to get with Griffin Kell, and that is rock solid execution, except
Keep
for
it
that
up.
one extra point that he missed. But
Yeah.
anyways, um, I think for this game, a lot of the keys are going to be the same. Um, Offensively, again, the Frogs are well rested. Quentin Johnston, I definitely believe is going to be featured early and often in this game. Establishing the run is going to be really important too. The Frogs kind of struggled to run the ball against Baylor. Iowa State, Kendra Miller did rush for 72 yards and two touchdowns, so it was nice to see a little bit of success there. But TCU is going to need to really establish the run in this game, and I think that's also going to help take Uzama out of being a factor. Is how do you neutralize a big time pass rusher? Well, you run the ball, you find ways to roll the quarterback out of the pocket or get the ball out quickly. Continue to use the running backs out of the backfield the way TCU has over these last couple of games. Um, Targeting tight ends like Jared Wiley and Jaquarius Spivey over the middle, taking advantage of some soft zone coverage. Jared Wiley had his best game of the season against Kansas State. He had 5 catches for 74 yards and a touchdown. So it'll be interesting if TCU looks his way quite a bit in this one. He's been kind of quiet since then, but um, for TCU offensively, establish the run. I expect a pretty heavy dosage of Quentin Johnston, and then for Max Duggan, I think, and I'm not trying to be this guy, but could this be a Heisman moment for him? I think the
100%.
Baylor game, I think the Baylor game and the Iowa State game essentially sealed the invitation, right? You could potentially go out and make your stake for the Heisman Trophy with a Big 12 championship and a 13-0 season and a dominant performance. And Not trying to put too much pressure on him, obviously, and I don't think Max is the kind of player to you listen to the way that he talks and the way he conducts himself. I don't think that's noise that he really listens to. But
No, not
um,
at all. And I think the odds on that are don't represent the percentage chance that it happens. I think Duggan is the second in the odds behind Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams is minus 2,500, so that's an overwhelming favorite. You pay 2,500 to win $100 if he wins. Duggan is plus 2,000, where you pay $100, you win $2,000 if he wins. That's a he's a big underdog even at the second best odds, but there's absolutely a case or a situation that could happen this weekend where Caleb Williams comes out and is not good against Utah, and they lose for the second time to the same team, and he puts on a terrible performance. Where Max comes out and has an amazing game to beat a top 10 team and win a conference title. So there's a percentage chance that happens, and I think it's better than what those odds are reflecting.
mhm. Yeah, and I think some other keys for this game as we look at TCU defensively. I think Deuce Vaughn is still priority one. Um, as well as Will Howard has played, you still have to make him beat you. Um, TCU at times has struggled to set the edge in the run game, and you can't do that against Deuce Vaughn. If Deuce Vaughn is able to get outside the tackle box in space, you're going to have problems. And he was able to break off a long run for a touchdown when Kansas State took that big lead early in the game the first time. So uh, stopping him is going to be paramount, obviously, but uh, if Will Howard winds up throwing for 300 yards and three touchdowns, you tip your cap and you move forward. I would
Yeah,
I would take my chances with him beating us as opposed to Deuce Vaughn getting 20 carries for 185 yards and two touchdowns or something like that.
yeah, I hear you there, and I will say I think you said something similar before the last game, and as Kansas State was running up points, I was like, this dude. He said if they score a bunch of passing touchdowns, that's going to be fine. And turned out you were right; it was fine. But man, I was like, God, I can't believe it. We said that on the air, but that was recorded. That we said it was okay to throw all those touchdowns. Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying because Deuce Vaughn is it all goes through him, and he is a one of a kind type player that is you really just kind of have to contain him. You're not going to be able to stop him. So
Mhm.
TCU did a pretty relatively good job of that in the first matchup. I mean, he didn't get to 100 yards. He had a couple catches. He had a big breakout touchdown run, but um, he didn't dominate the game like he's capable of, and that was a win. That's enough of a win for a defense against a Deuce Vaughn.
One thing I will add, um, TCU knows that Will Howard will start this game. I think that will definitely help as compared to last time where he came into the game after an injury, and that's happened a couple times to the Frogs this season. You think about the Kansas game when Jalen Daniels goes out and Jason Bean comes in and looks like uh, the second coming of Jason White. Um, the Frogs are going to have time to game plan for Will Howard now. So you would hope that that extra prep time and again having some rest, not playing a whole lot of snaps against Iowa State will help this time around. And I think the defense is going to come out and be better prepared in this game. This defense has found ways to turn the ball over recently. Trey Tomlinson has made some significant plays. Josh Newton. The secondary is at full health. Miller Bradford looks great. Bud Clark looks great. Dylan Horton quietly has had a really nice season with 4.5 sacks, and someone who is a defensive end in a 4-3 having to play a different technique and bulk up significantly has played a really nice season despite that, and is definitely deserving of that captain's badge. So I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be a lot. There's going to be a lot of back and forth. Um, I expect some fireworks. I'm excited for it.
All right, so how do you see it? What's your score? Did we give a final score yet?
My prediction. So TCU right now is favored by 2.5. I believe the total was 62, which that seems low to me, given how Kansas State has performed offensively over the last three games. Um, I think Kansas State is averaging close to 40 points, if not over 40 points a game over the last 3 weeks. So that seems low to me, but of course I'm picking the Frogs to win and cover the spread. My prediction is going to be TCU 45, Kansas State 34. I think this is going to be a high scoring game. I expect both teams to combine for anywhere from 8 to 900 yards, potentially even over 900 yards in this game. I think Will Howard's going to play well. I think Max Duggan is going to play better. I think the Frogs are going to be able to run the ball. They're going to avoid giving up those big sacks. They're going to protect the football. And I see them winning the Big 12 championship and keeping this thing going at 13-0.
Oh yeah, man, love it. So in the summertime, previewing the season, I had TCU beating Kansas State 31-30 in the game in October. I stuck with that, TCU winning 31-30, and I'm sticking with it here. TCU 31-30 is going to continue to be my projection. I think these teams are still very evenly matched, and with this total, TCU does not cover the spread, and it goes under the 62, but I think it's going to be a thriller in AT&T Stadium on Saturday night, Saturday morning, afternoon, Saturday.
Saturday morning, 11 a.m.
Yeah, get out there early. Go see the Heim Barbecue has been saying that they're going to set up a free tailgate out there. So get yourself some barbecue, the best in the world. Go go check out game day. Get your signs up. Show them whatever clever hypnotoad you've got out there, and get into Jerry World for that 11 a.m. kickoff. It's going to be a purple party in Arlington, and hopefully it's the TCU shade of purple that comes out celebrating at the end of the day, raising the trophy on high. I think that's all we've got for football. We'll quickly hit some other things. Really quickly, because we've already gone past our time limit, and we thank you for sticking with us. But basketball had several key games this week, and over the last week. So through the Thanksgiving break, took down 2 wins in Destin, Florida, in the Emerald Coast Classic. Came home with the trophy, taking down terrible California team. One of the I watched a little bit of that game. Man, that was some really bad basketball being played on both sides of that game. But TCU ends up coming with a kind of a dominant win in the end. Mike Miles takes over, but then got a really nice matchup against Iowa, number 25 at the time, Iowa, and no Damian Ball still in that game, no Emmanuel Miller, and TCU really took it to him. It was a complete takedown of the Hawkeye State. It was the same night as the TCU's victory over Iowa State in football. So, the entire state of Iowa belongs to the TCU athletics department, and TCU basketball gets those 2 big wins in the Thanksgiving week. There was also the Big East Big 12 showdown battle, whatever they call that non-conference contest between the two conferences. But with Providence in Shulmai Arena in Fort Worth, and TCU really looked really good in that one. Damian Ball was back, and it showed. He brought that shooting from long range back. He brought that distribution, 5 assists in the game. Eddie Lampkin finally played his best game of the season. Really went off, double-double, 16 points, 12 rebounds. Looked like he was everywhere on the court, having a good time again. This was the team we were expecting to see coming into the season, and they're really rounding into form here as we come into that December, closing down the non-conference schedule.
Yeah, the California game to start off the Emerald Coast tournament, that was very much the team that we've seen over the early part of the season where the offense was just completely broken. Shots were not going in, but much like the Lamar game where Mike Miles just said, F it, I'm going to do it myself. He came out and scored 23 points and actually came off the bench in that game. He was just coming back from his the bone bruise that he had suffered in his foot. So it was nice to see him come off the bench and be able to play a good amount of minutes and score the ball and kind of shoulder the load in that game. Like you said, the Iowa game was terrific. You had a couple key guys who typically come off the bench, and Micah Peavy and Xavier Cork, who really kind of shined in this game. Xavier Cork had 10 points and 2 blocks. Micah Peavy had 16 points and 8 rebounds. Really has gotten into a rhythm, is averaging just over 10 points a game on the season, and a player that's not really much of a perimeter shooter, but has found ways to score around the basket and be effective, as well as being a really solid defender. So if Micah Peavy can continue to play like this going into Big 12 conference play, it's going to be a huge boost for TCU. And TCU shot almost 55% from the field in that game, out-rebounded Iowa 41-28, and at the end of the day, it's a ranked win. So I think some folks were a little surprised that TCU didn't rejoin the top 25 after that, but they did lose to Northwestern State at home. You cannot do that. However, I think you could make a case after beating Providence on Wednesday that they might be legitimate candidates for being in the top 25 now. Eddie Lampkin, Jamie Dixon said, had been dealing with a little bit of an illness as well as a minor injury. Sounds like he's doing a lot better. 7 of 11 from the floor, 16 and 12. Chuck O'Bannon and Mike Miles both had 12 points, and Emmanuel Miller had 10 points. He didn't play in that Emerald Coast tournament with he tweaked his back, I guess, and they didn't want to risk putting him out there, but was happy to see him back on the floor. They had their starting 5 from last year, and it looked like the same team we saw last season. Micah Peavy had 13 points off the bench, and Damian Baugh, first season debut, filling up the stat sheet. I think last year he averaged 10, 5, and 5 roughly, and you look at the stats from the Providence game, 10 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, and 3 steals. I'll take that to the bank all day long when you can have a player that impacts the game all the way around like that. So really happy to see TCU get back to form and look like the team that closed out the season last year. And you got a couple significant games coming up. You play SMU, you play Utah. Got a couple lower level opponents mixed in there, but then it's Big 12 conference tip-off time. So hopefully TCU will continue to have success against some of those tougher non-conference foes before they get into the Big 12 slate.
That's great. And TCU Volleyball also earned a bid into the volleyball NCAA tournament as an at-large team. They're third in the Big 12 conference this season. So excellent regular season for the Horned Frogs there on first season under new head coach. And they get to travel to lovely, I'm sure it's wonderful in December in Madison, Wisconsin this time of year. But get to go take on 8 seed Washington in the first round, where if they do emerge victorious, they have to take on 1 seed Wisconsin, who beat them pretty handily in Shulmai Arena to open the season. Anything else on the volleyball, Russ?
Just congratulations to the program. Jason Williams in his first year as the head coach. We've talked about volleyball a little bit over the last couple of weeks, but as a TCU fan, really excited to see the turnaround of the program. They finished 16-10 overall in the regular season, 11-5 in the Big 12, which is the best finish in school history in the Big 12 conference. First tournament bid since 2016, and only the 4th tournament bid in school history. So a really significant accomplishment, and clinching as an at-large team. They'll get Washington in the first round, like you said, and that'll be tomorrow. Which once this podcast goes live, it'll be today. And then Wisconsin gets Quinnipiac. Wisconsin's going to win, so it'll be Wisconsin in the next round. And as you mentioned, that's a really tough matchup. Would like to see at least one win in the tournament. I think that would be awesome and can generate a lot of positive momentum going into the off season, going into next season. But cheer on the Frogs. I know they'll be streaming that match against Washington on the NCAA website. I believe it might be streaming on ESPN as well. So if you got a ESPN Plus account, go ahead and tune in. If you're on NCAA, go ahead and tune in there as well. And root for the Frogs as they look to make a little bit of noise in the postseason here in volleyball.
Absolutely. Exciting times for the Horned Frogs. We're going to let you all go here today. Really appreciate you listening. Thanks for following us on Twitter at Frogs of War, on Facebook, on YouTube. We will certainly have game thread and live tweet coverage of the big football game this weekend. And, it's exciting times. And, hopefully my flight in the morning all goes smooth and I get back to Texas and can get there to be in AT&T Stadium for the game on Saturday against Kansas State. Really looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great one and could be an all-time incredible moment for the Horned Frogs to have the opportunity to win that trophy and lock in a spot in the college football playoff.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. It's going to be an awesome weekend, that's for sure.
All right, with that, we'll let you go. Thanks. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.